Picasso, Porsche, Jaguar, Ford, BMW. Technological marvels live forever. However, this show won't be here forever. Just a few more weeks for you to enjoy this show in our gallery on Bellevue Avenue, only until March 10th. Also, if you're watching this video, become a subscriber to the Audrain Museum Network today to find out what the 50,000 subscribers already seen, that we're the place to be. Hello and welcome back to the Audrain Automobile Museum and our exhibition, Technological Marvels, a story of evolution. In this video, we're going to talk about the most modern cars in the exhibition, or among the most modern cars in the exhibition. And to do that, I'm joined by my friend and associate curator here at the Audrain, Mr. Benjamin Chester.
Long time no see.
It's been forever, Ben. And you know, I thought that when you were talking about that BMW 2002 in the video, which I'm sure you've all already watched, if you haven't, watch it now. You could not get more excited. However, I think we're going to have a little additional energy from you for this video because I know that these are cars that excite me as well.
Well, I'm a BMW enthusiast at heart, as you know. But here we have two great yellow cars. So it's going to brighten up my day for sure.
Exactly. And you know, the technology of yellow is something which has not really been adequately researched and supported. But seriously, in the world today, people often talk about the fact that all the cars seem to be silver and black and gray and white. And there is still something that makes your heart race when you see a yellow car, a red car, an orange car, a bright blue car. And actually in this segment, we're going to see not only these two yellow cars, but we're going to see a bright blue car and a gold car. So that's going to be pretty exciting. But this part of the exhibition really talks about sort of a transition of technology. And we're going to start by talking about one of the cars that anyone who is a car enthusiast at all, and even a lot of people who aren't, really know as a landmark car from a landmark sports car manufacturer, Porsche.
Yeah.
And it's our 2005 Porsche Carrera GT.
It's, yeah, one of the best cars of all time, for sure, and no matter how you slice the cake. But just starting with the colors. I think Doug DeMuro has one of these, automotive journalist, and he's got a silver one. And he's noted that he'll drive around in traffic and hardly get noticed. So with a yellow car, it's much different, but that is really Porsche's mantra. It's, if you know, you know, and it's truly a subtle design when it's not in yellow, but it's the engineering that really, you know, carries the team forward in
Well, since we started on design, of course, you know, I'm passionate about design. One of the things also that I really admire and love about the Carrera GT is the fact that it is one of those rare instances when the transition from concept to production was made almost effortlessly. Yeah. This looks like the concept car that I first saw, and it was like, wow, they actually built it.
Yeah, they really did, and there were some minor changes, but we're not talking like the new Toyota Supra. That was a completely different car, and the wheelbase got shortened and was put on a BMW chassis, but this is very close to what the concept car was dreamed of. And in terms of what's underneath the skin, it literally doesn't get better than this for what time period we're talking about, especially considering the engine was built really in the 90s.
Well, and that's a great story because the Carrera GT is a wonderful example, probably one of the best modern examples of success from failure. The engineers that originally designed this engine, which was designed as a V12 for Formula One racing and was horrible. It was overweight, it wasn't reliable, and quickly was dismissed. Then revised it as a V10 when V10s ruled the Formula One world, and put into a car from the footwork team, which I know all of you who are Formula One fanatics, you all root for footwork. Oh my God. And even footwork could not make this Porsche engine work, so up on the shelf it went. Then Porsche thought, well, you know what? We'll attack Le Mans. This will be the perfect thing for that. So they dusted the engine off and prepared a prototype to do it. And they said, nah, we're not going to do that either. So the engine went back on the shelf. And all of a sudden, they thought, well, why not build a range-topping, road-going super GT car?
Yeah.
Back it comes, and history is made.
Yeah. Porsche was due by the late 90s, early 2000s for a top of the line supercar. And they thought, well, why don't we build a concept, we'll take it to the motor show, we'll see how it does. And it took the world by storm. But the whole process behind engineering a skin around this engine that had already been built and making everything work was really a feat of masterful engineering. And they revised a completely new clutch. They basically turned the transmission sideways, from what I understand, and they just made it work because they knew it would be a great result. And it's truly, the result is the best analog driving car of all time.
Which brings up another great point. Your segues and lead-ins are absolutely brilliant, which is why we make such a great pair here at the Audrain Museum Network. And that is the fact that this also is the high point of the end of an era. But when it was designed, nobody thought it was going to be the end of the era. It's just sort of the progression. You know, we built the 959, we're building the Carrera GT, we'll build another thing sort of like this in the future. But of course, they didn't.
Right.
And one of the things that this also brings back, the Carrera GT has a fearsome reputation for its performance at the limit.
It's great, isn't it?
And I will say, needless to say, I've never driven a Carrera GT anywhere near the limit, thank you very much, and I won't. But it also goes back to sort of a fundamental Porsche, two fundamental Porsche points, which is the fact that it's mid-rear engine, which is the configuration of the great Porsche RSK race cars of the 1950s. So this is really Porsche's performance space. And the fact that the early 911s were driven in anger and at speed by very experienced and capable drivers who knew what they were doing. And the Carrera GT was a great throwback to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always discuss this car in the gallery, and to anyone who's interested, that technology has come a long way since this car came out. The world's come a long way since this car came out. YouTube was invented since this car came out. But a lot of people who own these cars or were familiar with them may not have had the resources to truly learn about them, and they may not have been explained the nuances at the dealer. So they would get in and either have a clunky sort of drive, or they would lose it at the limit or close to the limit. But since this time, in my opinion, tire technology has been the one driving modern kind of change since this car. And with newer tires on a car like this, it's much more easy to handle. But when they came out, they were very dangerous, to say the least.
And it is something that I remember as, well, not quite a kid, but certainly as a person basically your age when the 930 Turbo was first introduced. And again, that same idea of a car that took mastery to control. You just didn't get in it, turn the key, push your foot as far as you could, and hope for the best.
Not intuitive.
That was not a plan at all. And so, you know, talking about the progression of technology and thinking about this is a 2005 car and what a 1995 range-topping Porsche was, to go ahead now 10 years from this, and we're at the other yellow Porsche, which we have here, which is truly, for me, it's one of the great landmark moments, I think, in high-performance cars.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, and the way I think about it is, I was born in 1995. So this car comes out when I'm 10 years old. The world's in a great place in 2005. We've got everything we need, and we don't know how much more we're gonna get in the next 10 years. But to me, this is how I understand how technology has progressed and so quickly since 2005, in that we've gone from a V10 stick shift, no traction control beast to all-wheel drive, hybrid, dual clutch, electric only for almost 20 miles, and just you could do anything with it and drive it anywhere. The world has come so far. So
the 918 is one of my favorite Porsches of all time, and I also am somebody who really, really, really enjoys the idea, concept, and execution of hybrid cars. That when McLaren introduced the P1, this was introduced the Ferrari, LaFerrari, the BMW i8. It was the first time that performance manufacturers really embraced the idea of hybrid cars, and that it could be expressed in a way that was true to the brand identity and also sort of moved the ball forward. And the 918 to me is that perfect balance, because when you have that silent electric start, it's absolutely amazing. You just put your foot in just a little bit and then, oh my God, that glorious wail.
It's bizarre.
And the handling is amazing. And also talking about the advances in technology, the fact that the brief for this car was actually even more technologically advanced. Originally, in some of the concepts, it had 4 electric motors, 1 for each wheel.
Yeah.
And Porsche thought, well, that's going to get too complex, be too heavy, and we just need to sort of rein it back for our first car in this realm. And the fact that now the Porsches that they offer in the regular family range, all electric, hybrid, and ICE.
Yeah.
It's absolutely astonishing to think of how far Porsche has come in the next 10 years.
Oh, it's absolutely shocking, honestly. And when the 918 comes out, it obviously was brought to market along with the Ferrari LaFerrari McLaren P1, and those were cars that you basically could not drive at the limit with the same hybrid technologies, but rear-wheel drive. Mm-hmm. So this comes out all-wheel drive. It weighs almost 4,000 pounds, and reviewers like Chris Harris were saying it's not possible. It can't possibly work. But this comes out. It obviously proves everybody wrong because they're Porsche. That's almost what you expect them to do. And it doesn't even feel like it's half of that weight, and it moves effortlessly, and you can drive it however way you want, whether it's completely all-wheel drive with a rear-wheel bias, hybrid, race mode, whatever you want to do. And it was so good. 900 horsepower, sets a sub 7-minute Nürburgring lap time. And now, almost 10 years later, we've got a Cayman basically doing that.
Exactly. I don't know the exact number, but it was mind-boggling. Something that this is the most complicated electronically equipped Porsche ever built. And yet it's got apparently something like 1/5 the lines of code that are in a Cayman.
Yeah.
And it's astonishing to also think about the fact that these 2 cars, the Carrera GT and the 918, also represent something which is really interesting because we have here on this network compared the Ferrari F40 to the Porsche 959.
Right.
All technology, all chassis and basic.
Right.
Porsche basically built the F40 for the modern age in the Carrera GT, and then 10 years later built the new 959.
Yeah, and it's really funny because it's almost a direct dichotomy because this feels like there's so much going on and you're working so hard to make it work right, and this has millions of times more going on considering what's going on underneath the skin, and you can literally drive it with your eyes closed. It's so easy.
We don't recommend that you drive it with your eyes closed, however.
No.
I'll put a little disclaimer under the screen there, despite what my colleague
I mean,
Ben
I would
Chester
disagree.
said.
I could say you could do whatever you want, but just don't listen to my advice about it.
No, it's absolutely extraordinary cars. And the next car that we're going to talk about is something that also is quite interesting because, again, as you mentioned so beautifully, the fact that the 918 uses technology in a way that makes technology our servant. Mm-hmm. It makes the driving easier, it makes us more capable drivers. And now the next car we're going to see is technology used to advance the material effect of a car and how that affects performance. So let's take a look at another German car, shall we?
Good.
Yellow was pretty exciting, but this is another level. In fact, you might say it's sort of a yellow that's actually gone directly to the sun. This color is called?
Solar beam.
Solar beam, exactly.
Great lead-in.
That
was good.
Well, I've been doing this for a couple of years.
You prepped for that.
Yeah, I did. I confess. This is an extraordinary car. It's interesting that Mercedes-Benz has made in the modern era a number of high-performance cars, especially those that have been modified by their AMG division, that have certainly worked to be inspired by and to enhance the legend of the 300 SL Gullwing.
Right.
And this is another one of those cars with the characteristic gullwing doors, but Mercedes is also quite clever. They don't actually just exploit that feature for any car. They just don't say, well, we'll be very cynical about it and put gullwing doors on a sort of ordinary, boring car. And this is certainly not an ordinary and boring car. The SLS is a very exciting, high-performance, range-stopping GT car. This one, the SLS Black Series, is sort of the SLS turned to 11.
Or 12.
Maybe 13.
This is an interesting car to have in the show because cars like, the 918 or the 2002 Turbo that we talked about. Each of these cars in the show brought a new sort of technology to the program. Whereas the Black Series here really, in my opinion, didn't introduce anything new to the spectrum, but it took everything that was already on this palette and improved it by 100% probably. Weight saving measures everywhere. All the internals in the engine were improved. Better wheels, wider track, rear wing, carbon fiber everywhere. It's, like you said, it's been turned up to 11, but it is truly the best product Mercedes could have built at the time and probably holds up still today with modern technology.
I think that your point exactly is the fact that a lot of manufacturers, including Mercedes, have built cars with powerful engines, with big brakes and a bit of weight savings here or there. This, they consciously took the, dare I say, sort of the Colin Chapman view of how do we make the car faster and perform better? Yes, we'll add a little power, but we'll take out a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And the fact that, 154 pounds doesn't seem like a lot, except you realize that it's you. It's like taking the weight of a person out of the car. So you could drive 2 up as if you're 1.
Yeah.
I mean, things like a carbon fiber drive shaft.
Yep.
I mean, titanium used extensively.
Yep.
And they went to a level that you normally only go to on a competition car.
Right.
Where you want to make things as light as humanly possible. And also the suspension is even lighter than the normal car. On a recent video here on the Audrain Museum Network, you can watch it here, I drove this car and it is an unbelievable performer, but it's really at its best on smooth surfaces, racetracks, the Autobahn, things where you're not going to get a lot of deflection because this car is incredibly unforgiving, but that's how it delivers its power.
Right. It's seriously a track-focused car, and Mercedes did not take, they left compromises out of the picture. So essentially, you're getting a track car that you can drive on the road. And even in Europe, you could get the Recaro bucket seats in there that save even more weight from the weight savings that you're getting out of it. But it is a dedicated car that you're not really going to want to drive every day. Maybe if you have a bad back, you're not going to drive this across country like a typical GT car either. But it performs really well when it's in its element. And everything about it is just really well thought out. And I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but just looking at the proportions of the car, from the front to the A-pillar, you have so much room. And then from there to the end is not as much room, but you have a massive engine here that's pushed back from the front axle, making it essentially mid-engine car.
Front mid-engine configuration, absolutely. And it's also something that is actually very much in the DNA of the Mercedes high-performance car. Looking back at the SLR McLaren and some of the other GT cars that Mercedes has built, it is very much, again, that feeling of the 300 SL. You've got lots of hood, which goes back to the old 1930s, 1920s concept of the longer the hood, the bigger, more powerful the engine was under the hood. Here, it's actually serving a different purpose. The fact that you need that engine placed where it is, near the windshield, but you also need space for cooling. You need space for crumple zones. You need all of that. And they've, I think, fused technology in a way that is, again, very much at the service of the driving experience that they intend the driver of this car to have.
Right.
And the next and last car we're going to see in this group is a car which, even for me, further takes that theme of technology in the service of performance.
To the moon.
Absolutely. Let's go. So from the glow of solar beam to the cool of Gulf livery. This, of course, again, is a modern icon and something that really shows off the progress in technology, the latest Ford GT. Now, what was it that all those folks, and I'm not insulting anyone in our audience, I know that, who were sitting at home, thumbing through their car magazines or scrolling down the internet and said, Ford is building a GT with an EcoBoost V6, oh please, ha ha ha, which then went on to win at Le Mans. Strange. The fact that we have gone from a level of technology that took 10 cylinders, screaming and working really hard, to a V6 that could deliver the same kind of performance, and also something which, going back to our first exhibition on landmarks in automotive engineering, our initial story from 1886 to 1939, the fact that we saw this great progression in early cars, that power equaled size of engine. And then people began to discover that you could actually get more from less. And that's the era in which we live today.
Yeah, of course. And this whole project was built around efficiency. So nothing in this car is here that doesn't need to be. And that includes space, weight, any kind of interior room, nothing. And I love telling the story. I've probably told it on the channel before, but the fact that they took two gentlemen who were probably 6 feet tall, 6'2", and sat them in here and then molded the cockpit around them and said, okay, that's how small we can be. And then they said, what kind of engine do we need to put in here to keep this cocoon shape and to make the car as small as possible? And well, that and fuel efficiency are how they ended up with the V6.
When you're building an endurance racer, those are the things you think about. How comfortable can the drivers be, and how efficiently can you package what is needed to get them where they need to go for 12 or 24 hours?
Yeah.
And that was the other great difference. I mean, everybody, practically everybody, loved the first Ford GT that came out in 2005. Terrific car,
great car,
wonderfully evocative, fun to drive, and slightly easier than the original GT40 about the guillotine doors, but still something that you have to be mindful of. This is a car that Ford designed to race. It was designed as a race car and then as a road car. And much like, that's difficult to make comparison of anything to the McLaren F1, but there's probably few cars you can think of that have the same road-going capability and race-winning capability. And that really takes something in terms of design and manufacture.
Yeah, and McLaren actually was built as a road car first.
Correct.
And most cars in this segment, you know, Carrera GT we talked about, the SLS we talked about, which did some racing, the 918, which hasn't raced, but all of these were built as road cars.
Right.
This was built as a race car to win Le Mans, which it did, and then they said, okay, how do we add power and make it a bit more supple for the road? But it's totally incredible. You sit right next to the passenger. Not that at Le Mans you have a passenger, but here you're literally probably, what's that, 8 inches?
Your new best friend.
Yeah, you couldn't be any closer. And just the amount of technology they added to this car was incredible to put it on the road. They actually have 2 sets of shocks and springs at each corner, and one only operates for race mode that drops it down about 2.5 inches instantly to give it no body roll and keep it as tight as possible.
And the sophistication of the aerodynamics in this car, both the active and passive aerodynamics, is unbelievably impressive. One of which, again, coming back to me and design, I love the way this looks, but all of the looks come from the aerodynamics.
Yeah.
And they've done a beautiful job, because for a very long time for me, the highest level of endurance racing, the GTP prototypes, were one among the most hideous cars ever built. And the fact that this car has that kind of aerodynamic efficiency in a beautiful shape. There's a wonderful video that Ford put out actually about the fact that the perfect aerodynamic shape is the teardrop. And the body itself makes a teardrop through the flying buttress. And then the flying buttress just basically holds the wheels while also providing a channel for the air to flow through the rear of the car to deliver the least negative pressure behind the car. The rear wing is a perfect airfoil shape. I mean, this is absolutely astonishing. Even the mirrors, I mean, everything is designed just to slice through the air with the least resistance while providing unbelievable downforce with the underbody tunneling, and it's remarkable.
I always say, no offense to Ford, but it makes no sense that Ford built this car. Because
that is very offensive to Ford.
No offense, but offense. But it's just a beautiful thing. It's a absolute, it's a class in how to meet form with function. It couldn't be better. Everything about it is slippery. I mean, if you could get a ride in this car and you stick your hand out the window, for example, the hot air from the radiators is tucked right in this channel. and just gets sucked right through the buttresses so that no air is wasted, essentially. And it ensures that the hot air is going through here and not getting sucked into the radiators, which wants fresh, cold air. It's just everything about it is unbelievable, and I just can't believe that Ford came out with it. It's crazy.
A brilliant car and a great testament to the Ford team that worked on this. And it was an amazing accomplishment because, again, when you realize what a manufacturer can accomplish when they set their goals to do it, whether it be Porsche, Mercedes, or Ford, it's remarkable. And this entire exhibition, from the Hudson Commodore onward through to these most modern cars, just proves how we have really evolved with technology to make technology not technology for technology's sake, but for the benefit of the car itself and for the owner and user.
Yeah.
So this has been absolutely brilliant. And Ben, thank you very much for joining us on this part of the journey. And we'd like to thank you for being here on the Audrain Museum Network, watching this video. Be sure to watch here for our other driving videos and our experiential videos as well. And of course, as we often said, we know that you love these videos. If you do, make sure that you're a subscriber, tell your friends to subscribe, and come back for more great content. Thank you.